My name is Evelyn Pearson, and I am 62 years old. Most people who meet me nowadays see the steady hands, the calm voice, the silver hair pulled low at the nape of my neck. They see the woman who plays piano at the community center and tends to an herb garden behind a small blue house. What they don't see is the life I lived before I earned this quiet. And they certainly don't see the scars, some healed, some still tender, left behind by a family who never quite understood the difference between love and control. For 34 years I've been married to my wife, Mary Ann. We raised 2 children together, both adults now. We built a modest but comfortable life, never extravagant, but always grounded in honesty and steady work. Mary Ann is thoughtful, patient, and the kind of person who would give away the last slice of pie even if she'd been craving it all day. But not everyone in my family sees her that way. Least of all my mother. My mother, Vivian, is a force of nature. Sharp, quick, intimidating without raising her voice. She's 86 now, and in her younger years she was the kind of woman who organized neighborhood fundraisers, chaired boards, and delivered feedback like it was part of a civic duty. She could be generous, yes, but her generosity often came with strings wound tight as piano wire. My family has always had an odd relationship with money. Not wealth, just control over money. My father was practical, careful. But when he died 20 years ago, everything became about power. Mom decided she alone should be the steward of what remained. Every dollar had to go where she said. Every decision had to go through her. It didn't matter that my siblings and I were middle-aged adults with our own families. She believed she knew best. And when it came to Mary Ann, Mom's opinions hardened into something immovable. She's lovely, Evelyn, she would say. But she's not business-minded. Not the type who should be making financial decisions. I don't trust her with money. She said it politely. She said it often. And she said it like it was a fact proven in a courtroom. I always let it slide. Partly because I hated conflict, partly because my mother had a way of making you feel childish for questioning her. But most of all, because Mary Ann never pushed me to defend her. She didn't believe my mother's approval was something she had to earn. Still, those words lodged deep inside me. I never forgot them. Years passed, and Mom started asking me to help with small errands, bank trips, reviewing bills, updating insurance policies. It became clear she was preparing for something. And I knew, sooner or later, the question of her estate would come up. One evening, while I watered the basil outside, I felt the first hint of a shift. Mom had called earlier that afternoon, her voice thin but determined. "Evelyn," she said, "I need to update my estate plans. I need someone dependable. Someone who won't be influenced. Someone who won't let emotions and money mix." I knew what she was implying. I also knew what she assumed I would say. But that day, for reasons I couldn't fully explain, something inside me stirred, something firm, quiet, and long overdue. Because after a lifetime of being told what Mary Ann wasn't, what she couldn't do, what she shouldn't be trusted with, I felt a dawning certainty that the final chapter of my mother's life didn't belong to her expectations. It belonged to the truth. And the truth had been brewing for decades. I didn't reveal my plan then. Not to her, not to anyone. But as I stood there with water running over my hands and the basil releasing its sharp, peppery scent, I knew something was coming. A reckoning. A moment when the roles would shift. I didn't yet know how deep the coming conflict would go, or how sharply it would cut into my family's buried tensions. But I knew this. My mother had made one assumption too many. And the cost of that assumption was about to reshape everything she had tried so hard to control. I can pinpoint the exact moment the foundation of our family began to split. It happened on a Tuesday morning, one of those deceptively calm days when sunlight comes in thin golden stripes through the blinds, and everything feels too ordinary to hold anything catastrophic. Mom had asked me to come over to finalize some paperwork. That always meant long hours at a dining table, surrounded by meticulously labeled folders that smelled like old paper and lavender. Her house was still exactly as she kept it when I was a child. Porcelain figurines, antique clocks, upholstery with patterns too intricate to fully understand. Time didn't move forward in that house. It hovered. When I arrived, my sister Caroline was already there. She's 5 years younger than me, restless, emotional, and constantly trying to prove herself. Years ago she told me she felt Mom saw her as the backup daughter. Not the first choice for responsibility, but the one who would always be available. That resentment shaped everything she did. She sat at the dining table, arms crossed, eyes flashing when she saw me. Mom noticed, of course, but pretended she didn't. "We need to go through the estate documents," Mom said. "And we need to decide who the executor will be." I thought she'd already made that decision. She'd spent years implying that the job belonged to me. She didn't trust anyone else. Not Caroline, who she said was too emotional, and certainly not Marianne, whom she dismissed with her usual refrain. But before I could even sit down, Caroline spoke. "Mom already made a decision," she said. "I'm going to be executor." The room seemed to still. I felt my pulse in my ears. I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I thought we would discuss it," I said carefully. Caroline smirked. "It's not that complicated, Evelyn. I live 10 minutes away. I check on Mom more than you do. It just makes sense." It was a deliberate jab. And it wasn't true. I visited twice as often as she did. But Caroline always made sure her visits were loud, visible, strategically timed. Mom cleared her throat and finally looked at me. "You're very busy with your life," she said. "And with Marianne's health issues and her spending habits, well, the responsibility shouldn't fall on your household." There it was. The familiar condescension. The quiet accusation. The outdated belief that Marianne, my wife of over 3 decades, was some kind of liability. I felt heat rise in my chest, not anger exactly, but a profound weariness. "Mom," I said calmly, "this isn't about Marianne. It's about accuracy and fairness." Caroline snorted, but I ignored her. Mom folded her hands. "I just want someone practical in charge. Someone who won't get influenced." Influenced. Code for, your wife can't be trusted. All the years of quiet slights, whispered concerns, friendly advice, and thinly veiled prejudice came rushing back. I had spent a lifetime smoothing myself down to make Mom comfortable. But in that moment, clarity sharpened inside me. "Who is listed in the draft documents?" I asked. Mom hesitated. "Caroline," she said. "I had them updated last month." So she had already changed it, without telling me, while still expecting me to help her manage her finances, organize her paperwork, and run her errands. It wasn't just favoritism. It was betrayal. Because she had let me serve her, knowing she had quietly revoked the role she had promised me for years. I sat down slowly, placing my bag beside the chair. My voice was level, but inside, something locked into place like a gear finally finding its slot. "I understand," I said. "If that's your decision, then I'll step back from any financial help. Caroline can handle all of it." The room shifted. Caroline's smirk vanished. Mom's eyes widened. "What do you mean, step back?" she asked. "I mean," I said gently, "that I won't be involved in your financial affairs anymore. You have your executor. You have your decision." For a woman who prided herself on control, that single sentence knocked something loose. "You can't just withdraw," she said. But she was wrong. I could. And I would. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply gathered my purse, nodded politely, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Caroline whisper, shocked, angry, maybe even a little afraid. "What did you think would happen, Mom?" And for the first time, I realized something. My mother had built her authority on the expectation that I would always be the steady one. She had never once considered what would happen if I stopped being steady and started being strategic. I drove home in silence, the world outside my window passing in soft blurs. Old houses, schoolyards, Trees full of early summer leaves. Everything looked unchanged, yet inside me something had shifted so completely I wondered how I had ignored the signs for so many years. When I pulled into the driveway, Mary Ann was sitting on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea. She has always had a way of sensing when something is wrong before I even cross the threshold. "You're early," she said gently. I sat beside her, feeling the weight of the morning settle into my bones. "She made Caroline the executor," I said. "Without telling me. The documents are already signed." Mary Ann didn't respond immediately. She just placed a warm hand over mine and waited for me to continue. "And she said she didn't want you influencing financial decisions," I added softly. That small flinch, barely perceptible, was enough to break something inside me. Not anger, not outrage. Just sorrow. Because my wife, the most financially careful person I know, had been reduced to a stereotype in my mother's mind for over 3 decades. Mary Ann exhaled and leaned back. "Evelyn, your mother has never trusted me." "Not really." "I know. It's not about money," she added. "It never was. It's about control. And who she believes deserves it." Her words folded open a memory I had kept tucked away for years. When I first introduced Mary Ann to my family, my father welcomed her, but my mother hesitated. She never said anything overtly cruel, but she asked dozens of practical questions. What does she earn? Does she come from a stable family? Does she save responsibly? Does she understand long-term planning? Underlying every question was an implication. Mary Ann was not enough. For years I made excuses. Mom's just being cautious. She'll come around. She cares. But the truth is, my mother saw marriage as an institution shaped by hierarchy. Someone leads. Someone follows. Someone controls the money. Someone is trusted. Someone is tolerated. When I built a life with Mary Ann, equal, united, mutually supportive, my mother saw it as a threat to the order she believed in. And when the children were young, the divide deepened. Mom would slip cash to me for emergencies, but hand Mary Ann a grocery list with clipped instructions. She would criticize how Mary Ann folded the children's clothes, or how she meal planned, or how she decorated the house. "She means well," I used to tell Mary Ann. But even I stopped believing that after a while. The worst of it happened 10 years ago, though I didn't recognize the pattern then. Mary Ann had a brief medical scare, a surgery that left her unable to work for 2 months. We lived comfortably within our means, but with the temporary loss of her income, we had to adjust. Mom saw it as proof of her long-held belief. "She doesn't manage well under pressure," she said. "You should take over the accounts. Keep things separate if you have to." I didn't respond. But the implications stayed, souring everything. Now all those years of quiet disrespect had culminated in this. Choosing Caroline, volatile, impulsive, irresponsible Caroline, as executor, simply because she was not my wife. I sat back on the porch chair and stared at the sunset painting the sky in soft peach tones. "Mary Ann," I said slowly, "I think Mom assumed I would keep helping her even after she cut me out of the decision." "Of course she assumed that," Mary Ann replied. "You've always been the one who did the right thing. Even when it hurt you." I looked at her. "But what if this time, the right thing is letting the consequences play out?" Her eyebrows lifted. "You're thinking of stepping back for real?" she asked. "I already did." Mary Ann nodded once, quiet and thoughtful. "So what happens next?" she asked. And that was the question, wasn't it? Because stepping back wasn't just about refusing to help. It was about letting my mother face the impact of choosing the wrong person for the job. It was about letting the truth rise to the surface in a way she couldn't control. And deep down, I knew something she didn't. Caroline was not prepared. Not for the responsibility. Not for the scrutiny. Not for the sheer volume of tasks Mom had always kept hidden behind her tidy file folders and clipped tone. And sooner or later, that truth would create a fracture. One deep enough to reveal everything Mom had tried to hide. The unraveling began the following month, though at first it came quietly, like the soft ticking of one of Mom's antique clocks. A shift here. A hesitation there. A moment when something didn't quite add up. I kept my distance, as promised. Caroline had insisted on taking over all responsibilities, and Mom had dug in her heels, refusing to admit she might need more support. But distance didn't mean blindness. One evening, I received a series of frantic texts from my brother Michael, who lived 2 states away. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. "Evelyn, something's wrong with Mom's taxes." Caroline sent me a scanned document. "It looks incomplete. Did Mom change accountants?" The last message came minutes later. "Did you resign from helping her? Caroline said you abandoned everything." Abandoned. The word stung, but it didn't surprise me. I called Michael immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Evelyn," he said without greeting, "what is going on?" I explained everything calmly, clearly, without accusation. The Executor decision. The disrespect toward Marianne. My choice to step back. Michael listened without interrupting. When I finished, he exhaled sharply. "Well," he said, "we have a problem." "What sort of problem?" "The sort that involves numbers not matching. And documents missing." My stomach tightened. Michael continued, "I've been reviewing what Caroline sent me. There are bank transactions with no explanations. Withdrawals that Mom never mentioned. And something odd about the house insurance. Looks like it lapsed for 2 months. Insurance. Taxes. Bank irregularities. None of this was surprising to me. Caroline had always been a whirlwind, emotional reactions first, logic later. She lived paycheck to paycheck despite earning a decent salary. She bought impulsively, fought constantly with creditors, and always had an explanation prepared when the bills didn't add up. And Mom, blindly trusting her simply because she was not Marianne, had handed her the keys to the entire estate. "Do you have copies of everything?" I asked Michael. "Yes," he said. "Caroline accidentally sent me the wrong file. It included a bunch of drafts. And, Evelyn, Mom's been moving money between accounts. Large amounts. Without any documentation." I sat up straighter. "Did Caroline authorize it?" I asked. "She claims she had no idea," Michael replied. "But honestly, I don't believe her." A familiar heaviness settled in my chest. I had hoped stepping back would encourage them to learn the hard way, not create a disaster. But as Michael spoke, something else stirred within me. Not anger. Not vindication. Purpose. For the first time, I felt the pull of something like a quiet investigation. Not to punish, but to protect. Not to avenge myself, but to ensure the truth came out. Not with fury, but with clarity. "Michael," I said, "send me everything." He hesitated. "Are you sure you want to get involved again?" "I'm not getting involved," I said. "I'm documenting." Because that was the difference. My mother had accused Marianne of being careless with money. My sister had called me irresponsible for stepping back. But the truth, the real truth, was sitting in spreadsheets and insurance letters and unsigned forms. And nothing reveals the truth like paper. Over the next week, I gathered documents, cross-referenced dates, and created a timeline. Marianne helped quietly, her organizational skills sharper than anyone in my family had ever given her credit for. We discovered 2 bank accounts Mom hadn't told anyone about, her savings bond she had accidentally let expire, a loan Caroline had taken out using Mom's address, or an insurance policy Mom believed was active, but wasn't, her a questionable transfer of $14,000 from a joint account Mom shared with Caroline. I didn't jump to conclusions. I simply laid everything out, line by line, like a puzzle waiting for someone to see the final picture. One evening, after hours of sorting paperwork, Marianne looked at me and said something that froze me in place. "You know," she murmured, "your mother's fears about me were always misplaced. But her trust in Caroline, may cost her everything. She was right. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a vindictive choice or a passive-aggressive slight. This was about incompetence, neglect, possible misuse of funds. And if Caroline was left as executor, Mom's final wishes could be rewritten by chaos, emotion, or worse, desperation. I closed the binder slowly. This has gone far enough, I said. It's time Mom sees the full truth. And that truth, once revealed, would change everything. I arranged the documents into a clean, chronological binder. Every page labeled. Every number cross-checked. Every missing signature noted in red. Marianne placed sticky tabs along the edges. Discreet, tidy markers that made the story clear without me needing to explain it. I didn't tell anyone what I planned. Not Mom. Not Caroline. Not even Michael, who had become increasingly anxious with each passing day. I knew the moment the binder opened, the shape of our family would shift. Maybe forever. The truth wasn't a weapon. It was a light. And I was ready to turn it on. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. Mom called one morning, her voice trembling, a rare, unsettling sound. "Evelyn," she said, "I need help." "What's wrong?" "It's Caroline," she whispered. "She's overwhelmed. She says the bank is accusing me of missing paperwork. And I don't understand what any of this means." Her voice cracked, not with tears but with something worse. Fear. For the first time in my life, Mom sounded small. "Can you come by?" she asked. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. When I arrived, Caroline was pacing the living room, muttering under her breath. Papers were scattered across the table. Receipts, forms, statements she clearly hadn't sorted or even read properly. She spun toward me. "Oh great," she snapped. "Mom called the cavalry." I ignored the hostility and sat at the table. Mom hovered nearby, wringing her hands. "What's the immediate issue?" I asked evenly. Caroline shoved a letter toward me. "This. The bank says Mom's trust is improperly filed. Something about missing trustee documentation." I scanned it. The problem was simple. Caroline had signed as executor instead of successor trustee. An amateur mistake. A fixable one, if she didn't panic. Behind me, Mom whispered, "I thought she could handle it, Evelyn." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the binder I had prepared and set it gently on the table. "What is that?" Caroline asked, suspicion cutting through her voice. "This," I said calmly, "is the truth of the last 6 months." I opened the first page. The room fell into a tense quiet. I showed them the insurance lapse. Mom gasped. Then the unexplained withdrawals. Caroline flushed red. Next, the bank transfers. Mom's hand flew to her chest. The expired bond. The loan tied to Mom's address. The absent IRS filings. And finally, the largest issue, a transfer from the joint account that had no documented purpose. Caroline exploded. "So now you're accusing me of stealing?" I looked up, meeting her eyes with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm showing the facts. But you're making me look incompetent." I didn't raise my voice. "You made yourself look that way by not preparing. By not asking for help. By taking on a role you weren't ready for. And by allowing Mom to believe she was protected when she wasn't." Caroline opened her mouth, closed it, then pointed a shaky finger at Mom. "You pushed this on me. You said Evelyn was too wrapped up in her wife to handle things." My mother's face drained of color. She looked from Caroline to the binder to me. Finally she whispered, "Is all of this true, Evelyn?" I held her gaze. "Yes." She sat down slowly, as though her legs had given out. "I trusted the wrong person," she said, not angry, but devastated. Caroline let out a harsh laugh. "Of course. It always comes back to me being the disappointment." "Caroline," I said gently, This isn't about your worth as a daughter. This is about responsibility. And Mom gave you a job without preparing you for it." She swallowed hard, eyes glassy. "I tried," she said. "I really did. But I thought you'd still be helping behind the scenes." And there it was. The expectation. The entitlement. The assumption that I would carry the load without acknowledgement or authority. Mom looked at her with a mix of sorrow and clarity. "You told me Evelyn abandoned us. But she was the only one holding things together." Caroline stiffened. "So what now? You make her executor again." Mom didn't answer. She turned to me. And in that moment, I knew the next step would change everything. For her, for Caroline, for all of us. I could feel the weight of the moment settle around us. Thick and still. Mom sat at the dining table, both hands resting flat against the wood, as if anchoring herself to something stable. Caroline stood by the window, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her breathing shallow. I remained seated, chair pulled slightly back, posture steady. I needed to be calm, controlled, clear. "Mom," I said, "before we talk about next steps, I want to address something directly." She met my eyes, and for once there was no defensiveness, only quiet expectation. "For years," I began, "you've said you didn't trust Marianne with money. You said she wasn't business-minded, or practical, or organized. But every one of those tabs in the binder," I nodded toward the documents, "was placed there by Marianne. She helped me cross-check every number. She caught errors I missed. She is the most competent financial partner I've ever had." Mom swallowed, color rising in her cheeks. "I was wrong," she whispered. "Yes," I said gently. "You were." I didn't say it harshly. There was no need for cruelty. The truth itself was enough. Caroline shifted irritably. "So what? We all make mistakes." "This wasn't a small mistake," I said, turning toward her. "Mom handed you control of her entire estate. You took out a loan using her address. You let her insurance lapse. You mishandled account transfers that could have triggered banking investigations. These aren't harmless errors." Caroline's face twisted. "I didn't do anything malicious." "I didn't say you did," I replied. "I'm saying you weren't prepared. And Mom paid the price." A hollow silence settled over the room. Then Mom exhaled shakily. "Evelyn," she said, "will you take over again? Before things get worse." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked at Caroline. "This isn't about punishing you," I said. "But you need to acknowledge what happened." Her jaw tightened. "Fine. I messed up." "That's not acknowledgement," I said calmly. "That's avoidance." Mom turned toward her. "Caroline, sweetheart, this could have cost me everything." For the first time, my sister's expression cracked. Her eyes shone with something like guilt, or maybe regret. "I thought you trusted me," she whispered. "I did," Mom said softly. "But I trusted you for the wrong reasons." I opened the binder again and slid the last page toward them. Marianne's neat summary of required corrections. "This is fixable," I said. "But only if we all agree on a new plan." Caroline crossed her arms tighter. "So you're taking over? Just like you always wanted." I shook my head. "No. I'm not going to be executor either." Both women froze. "What?" Mom asked. I sat up straighter. "If I take over, we'll be right back where we started. Me doing all the work, you questioning my boundaries, and Marianne being dismissed. I won't repeat that cycle." Caroline stared at me. "Then who's going to do it?" "The person you never trusted," I said softly. I turned to Mom. "Mom, I recommend appointing Marianne as executor." The room fell utterly still. Mom blinked once, twice, 3 times. Caroline burst out laughing. "You have got to be kidding me." I didn't waver. "No, I'm not." She's the only one who has demonstrated actual competence in sorting this mess. She's level-headed. She's ethical. She doesn't make decisions out of emotion. And she has no stake in old family rivalries. Mom stared down at her hands. When she finally looked up, her voice was barely audible. You want me to hand everything over to the woman I doubted for years? No, I said gently. I want you to trust the person who has always supported me. The person who helped fix your financial disaster without hesitation. The person who showed more care for your well-being than the daughters you raised. Caroline flinched, but did not argue. Mom's eyes filled with tears, not dramatic tears, just a quiet welling she didn't bother hiding. I was wrong about her, she said. Yes, I repeated softly. You were. Another long silence. Then Mom spoke, voice steadier than before. Call the lawyer, she said. I want Marianne named executor immediately. Caroline sank into a chair, stunned. And I felt something inside me, some decades-old wound, finally begin to close. Not because I had won, but because the truth had finally found its way to light. The next few weeks unfolded with a quiet intensity, like the slow realignment of tectonic plates beneath a city. Nothing dramatic happened on the surface. No shouting matches, no slammed doors, but everything shifted. Mom and I met with her estate attorney, a calm older man who had worked with her for years. When she announced her intention to appoint Marianne as executor, he looked surprised but not opposed. Are you certain, Vivian? He asked gently. Mom nodded. I've made the wrong assumptions for too long. It's time for a responsible decision. Caroline sat stiffly in the corner of the room, arms crossed, jaw tight. But she didn't argue. Not openly. The weight of the binder, and the truth it held, had left her without leverage. Marianne joined us for the second meeting, her posture elegant, her tone respectful. She asked clear, intelligent questions that impressed even the attorney. What circumstances require probate? Are there digital assets included? What are the reporting guidelines for trust management? By the time the meeting ended, the attorney turned to her and said, You're remarkably organized. This role is well suited to you. Mom heard that. I could see her absorbing each word like medicine she hadn't realized she needed. When the documents were signed, Caroline stepped out into the hallway, unable to watch. She wasn't excluded permanently, just removed from a role she was not prepared for. Still, the sting was deep. A week later, she called me. This is humiliating, she said flatly. It's accountability, I replied. She let out a shuddering breath. I didn't want things to get this bad. I know. There was a long pause. Why didn't you just help me? She whispered. I chose my words carefully. Because helping you secretly would have been enabling you. And it would have continued the pattern where Mom trusted the wrong person for the wrong reasons. Another pause. Do you hate me? She asked. No, Caroline. But I can't protect you from consequences. None of us grow that way. She didn't respond, but the silence felt different. Less defensive, more introspective. As for Mom, the consequences were quieter, but far more meaningful. She began calling Marianne directly. At first it was practical questions. What documents do you need from me? Should I stop the automatic withdrawals? Where is the spreadsheet you set up? But slowly, the calls changed tone. How are you feeling, dear? Did Evelyn enjoy the soup I sent? Would you two like to come for brunch this Sunday? The first time she called Marianne dear, my wife nearly dropped the phone. Healing wasn't immediate. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Meanwhile, Marianne took the executor role seriously. Not for power, but for integrity. She set up a transparent accounting system. She consolidated Mom's scattered accounts. She arranged automatic bill payments. She contacted the IRS about the expired bond and had it reissued. She helped file corrected insurance paperwork. Mom watched all of this with growing respect and, eventually, something close to awe. One afternoon, after a particularly productive meeting, Mom turned to me with tears in her eyes. "All these years," she said softly, "I thought I was protecting you from her. But really, she's been protecting you from me." It wasn't an apology. It was something deeper. Recognition. As for me, I felt something release inside me, like a knot slowly untying after decades of tension. Justice hadn't come with fury. It had come with truth, clarity, and accountability. The kind of revenge that isn't spiteful, but corrective. The kind of justice that not only reveals deception, but heals what was broken underneath it. In the months that followed, something remarkable took place. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but deeply human. My mother softened. Not entirely. She remained herself, sharp, opinionated, meticulous. But with the weight of the truth finally out in the open, she began living differently. Letting go a little. Trusting a little. Listening more than she instructed. One evening, Marianne and I had her over for dinner. Nothing fancy, rosemary chicken, steamed vegetables, and a berry cobbler Marianne had made from scratch. Mom ate slowly, savoring each bite as if tasting our home for the first time. When the dishes were cleared and the soft hum of the dishwasher filled the kitchen, she asked Marianne to sit with her in the living room. I stayed behind, wiping crumbs from the counter, giving them space. Later, Marianne told me exactly what happened. Mom had taken her hand, fragile but steady, and said, "I misjudged you. You deserved better from me." Marianne, never one for theatrics, simply replied, "Thank you." That was all. No long speeches. No rehashing of old wounds. But the space between them shifted, opened, healed. And for me, watching them laugh softly together later that night over old family photos, it felt like reclaiming a part of my life I hadn't realized I was missing. Not victory. Not vindication. Just peace. Looking back now, I see the entire journey with a clarity I didn't have while living through it. My mother's distrust wasn't truly about Marianne. It was about fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of aging. Fear of becoming irrelevant. Fear of depending on people she didn't fully understand. Caroline wasn't malicious either. She was overwhelmed, insecure, and desperate to prove herself, to win the approval she always felt dangled just out of reach. And me. I spent years playing mediator, peacemaker, bridge builder, never realizing that healing sometimes requires stepping back and letting consequences do what words cannot. What happened wasn't easy, but it was necessary. By stepping away, I allowed the truth to surface. By documenting the facts, I protected my mother from her own blind spots. By advocating for Marianne, I honored the woman who had stood by me for a lifetime. And by insisting on accountability, I helped my sister grow in ways she never would have otherwise. Ethical revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's about guiding them into reality, gently, firmly, and with unwavering honesty. It's the kind of justice that clarifies rather than destroys. The kind that transforms. Now, when I visit Mom, she always asks for Marianne first. Is she coming too? I'd love to show her the new budgeting app she recommended. That small shift, a question I never thought I'd hear, means more to me than any dramatic apology ever could. Because respect earned through truth is stronger than affection demanded through fear. And love honored through accountability is deeper than love preserved through silence. As I sit here telling you this story, I think of all the families navigating old wounds, unspoken resentments, and buried assumptions. I think of how easy it is to let patterns persist simply because they are familiar, even when they are painful. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back. Let the truth rise. And let people see themselves clearly, perhaps for the first time. If my story resonates with you, if you've lived some version of it yourself, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part speaks to you the most? Have you ever had to use truth as your greatest form of justice? Share your experience. We grow stronger when we grow together.